Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like your style when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fast Lane Collective. I am Brianna, your host, and the only person here for this podcast episode today. We have just had a lot of things going on. Poor Yasmin had technical difficulties today while we were trying to record, and Daniela is resting up from her Formula E weekend that she attended with her team and with Whisper. So it's just me today, y'all. You're all going to have to deal with the American, but we're going to try something new. I want to make sure we bring you episodes every single week, and sometimes with all of our crazy schedules and being 6 hours apart from one another, that can get difficult. So we wanted to give this whole solo episode a try. So bear with me as we move through today's recap of the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, but here we go. This weekend was a sprint weekend, which, love it or hate it, it happens every single year at a bunch of different tracks. I personally find it hard to fit it into my viewing schedule and weekend, and I always kind of forget when these sprint races are happening at what track, so it really throws off my whole kind of watch F1 on the weekends routine. But one thing I did want to point out from the sprint race this weekend is obviously Max Verstappen. This just really summed it up for me, is if you give this man a chance, he's going to take it. And of course, we saw Max finish a sprint race in first. We haven't seen Max kind of up there with the big boys, being McLaren and Ferrari at the moment. So it was good to see him back. And again, just shows that when you give Max a chance and you put him up at the front of that grid, he's going to dominate no matter who he's against. Past Oscar Piastri on the first lap, just a beautiful overtake. Obviously had some help with that slipstream that helped him out a lot. But yeah, just sprint race highlight, Max Verstappen. Again, just a masterclass in what it means in overtaking and how to dominate in those situations. All right, let's move on to the race. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear Spa, I think rain. It always rains at this track every single year. Honestly, since I've been watching F1, which is a good 8 or possibly 9 years now, I don't think I've seen a single race happen at this track where it hasn't rained at some point in the race weekend, and this race this year was no different. Obviously, we had a rain delay of an hour, which I hope you didn't have plans on race day because you probably weren't making them. It always rains in Spa, and as a fan, this can be exciting, and it can also be really annoying when it comes to a rain delay like we saw this weekend. Personally, this brings up the question of, should Spa be replaced on the F1 calendar? I don't know. We know that the drivers really love this track. Lewis Hamilton was quoted in saying this is the only track that you drive that you feel like you're going somewhere. And what he meant by that was the track puts you through a lot of different elevations, a lot of different scenic types of environments, like the trees, obviously Eau Rouge, which is the famous corner here. And the drivers really seem to enjoy this track, and it is a very difficult track to drive. So from a driver perspective, probably no. They would want to keep this track on the calendar. It's something they love. But from a fan perspective, I'm not so sure. I'm kind of a little sick of having to sit through rain delay after rain delay, or a couple years back when the race was completely called and canceled entirely. It also brings about some questions around safety. We all know that obviously a couple of years ago, the horrible death of Antoine Hubert at this track that we always remember every single year, which I'm really glad the drivers do. But does that play a role in this? And does that make the FIA a little bit more hesitant to kind of, take some chances and race in the rain or wait too long? For example, when we got racing again an hour later, the rain had already stopped and the track pretty much dried up within 15 to 10 laps. We already saw people changing their tires from wets to regular tires. So it was a little interesting, and sometimes I do wonder, is rain a fun factor for this track or a more annoying one? And more of a safety concern than anything. I think we would have saw the FIA kind of pull the trigger on the race starting earlier if this wasn't Spa. Obviously, like we mentioned, Hubert's death, that is fresh in everyone's mind at this track specifically because of that, and obviously other deaths and incidents that have happened at this track as well. So I don't know if the FIA was just playing it safe or was really saying, no, this track isn't safe to drive on, and that's why we have to wait this long. So that's kind of always a question I think that comes up with Spa. Do we keep it on the calendar? I also find that the racing here, it either goes one or two ways. It's incredibly intense and very, very interesting, or it's very boring, which honestly I felt was this race. The most exciting part was the beginning and the possibility of the rain affecting the outcomes, but as soon as that track dried up, it was kind of status quo. So, rain delay, good thing, bad thing, rain at this track always. What do we do about it? Do we do anything about it? Let's move on to McLaren. Obviously, they are the dominant players this year. This is not new news to any of us. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have been duking it out all season long for the World Championship for themselves. And with what happened this week, again, Oscar Piastri just showed some really, really great dominance over his teammate Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri finishing first, which put him at 266 championship points, and Lando finishing second, which put him at 250 championship points. So it's still incredibly close, which as a fan really, really makes me excited. As a Lando fan, scares me a little bit. I feel like Lando has really stuck it out with McLaren, and this is his goal, is to win a world championship with McLaren as a driver. Obviously, they accomplished part of that goal last year with winning the Constructors. But this year, he sees it's within his grasp. It's could happen. And as a Lando fan, seeing the younger Oscar Piastri kind of beat him out and outsmart him in certain ways, really scares me and shocks me as well. I mean, not to take away from Oscar Piastri's amazing performance this year. He's been doing so well this weekend. Again, just nursing those medium tires all the way to the end, which was fantastic. Obviously, Lando and Oscar were on two different tire strategies entirely. But he did a fantastic job, and it's just proven over and over again that he's got that little something over Lando Norris. Let's talk about Lando's two mistakes that possibly cost him the win this weekend. One where he put a nice big old flat spot in his hard tires toward the end of the race, and then on the final lap going a little wide into that corner, which put a big enough gap between him and Oscar Piastri where possibly passing Oscar was kind of impossible at that point after that. Are these mistakes out of nervousness? Are these mistakes out of anxiousness? Or are these mistakes out of just pushing the car a little too far and not really feeling the car like you should be? I think if Lando wouldn't have made these two mistakes, specifically the huge lockup into the corner, which caused a flat spot in his hard tire, I think he could have caught up to Oscar Piastri in those last 2 to 3 laps, and we could have seen a real battle for the win, but we didn't get that. And it begs to say, is this the little thing between Oscar and Lando that differentiates them as McLaren drivers? Oscar is very, very level-headed. We know this also in his interviews. Whether he wins or loses, he often has the same reaction, except for a couple of races ago, where we actually saw him get mad for the first time ever. Where Lando, we know, is very open with his emotions, which isn't a bad thing at all, but part of me wonders, is he allowing his emotions to get the best of him? We know that being an athlete, and especially being a race car driver, it's very much a mental game as much as a physical one, and a pure talent, obviously. But I wonder if these little mistakes that we saw happen with Lando were a combination of the tires losing their life and Lando's anxiousness and nervousness around trying to catch Oscar, or was it just a tire life situation? this is the type of thing that divides the champions with the losers. And will Lando be able to kind of tighten up his game to not make these types of mistakes again so he can gain those extra little points that he does need on Oscar? Being 16 points apart from each other, that gap is slowly getting larger. Still close, but it's slowly getting larger, and Lando Norris definitely doesn't want that gap getting any larger than it is right now. So will Lando be able to tighten up his game? We will see in the next coming races. Let's also talk about something that I found really interesting that happened over the radio. If you were listening to Oscar Piastri's radio, regarding tire strategy. Now, obviously, Lando was given the option, should you do mediums or would you take hards right now if you wanted to go to the end of the race? He opted for the hards out of those two options he was given. Where Oscar was given kind of a different playbook. They asked him what he would like to do strategy-wise, which I found really interesting, and they even talked about this on the broadcast as well. They said to Oscar, do you want to take these mediums to the end? Do you think you can? What do you want to do, basically? And I find this a little strange because obviously we know the track conditions were not like it had been during the weekend, so a lot of their data was kind of skewed or maybe not exactly reliable. But they have enough data at this track to know how long those medium tires can go. What kind of risk are we taking on if we decide to take those medium tires to the end? And instead of providing Oscar Piastri with that information, they just were like, what do you want to do, bro? Which, to me, that very much is the pit wall's job, is to give options to the drivers, if anything, and giving their recommendation on what they feel is the most successful option, or just straight up telling the drivers, we know this is the most successful option, let's go plan A, or if you're Ferrari, plan X or Z or Y. And instead of that, kind of giving Oscar the opportunity to play strategy. I don't know if this is something that his team has planned to do with him and something he's voiced and said he would prefer if put in certain situations, or if this was something new that McLaren was doing, especially when their two drivers are so close like this. Letting your driver kind of make the strategy call seems a little confusing to me, especially when that's your job and you have all the data and the numbers and the statistics to give you the best path forward. It'd be different if they were asking, do you think these tires can go to the end? It wasn't that question. It was, do you want to? You let us know what you want to do. Even at the time, Oscar did say over the radio, I don't know if I could take these to the end necessarily. I'm already seeing deg on them as they are. When I heard Oscar say this, I was like, is he just saying this to try to throw off the Lando camp? Obviously, these two are very close in the championship. You don't want to give away your hand, especially over the radio, as we know everyone can hear that. Or was he truly telling the truth, saying, hey, there's a lot of deg on these tires already. I don't know if I can do it. And with the track drying up more and more after every single lap, who knows how things will operate. But in the end of the day, Oscar decided to take those mediums to the end, and it paid off. And Lando decided to take the hards to the end, and it didn't pay off like they thought. So I just found that interesting, putting their lead driver, who's leading the race, but also leading the championship, in the strategy seat at a very crucial point. It just seems like the McLaren strategy team, at least, should be giving him two successful options that they think they could play out, instead of saying, you tell us what strategy you're going to come up with while you're driving 200 plus miles an hour around a track, and you get back to us on that. It just seemed a little off and a little weird and a little strange, especially with how close both of their drivers are. But needless to say, congratulations to McLaren on another great weekend. Congratulations to Oscar Piastri on another fantastic win and more points for you. We will see how this duel plays out, but so far as a fan, I am enjoying it. All right, let's move on to Lewis Hamilton. I mean, our boy Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari it's been rough to say the least this year. I think it started off on a high and it very quickly cascaded down into a gully. But this weekend, Lewis Hamilton, we saw him kind of come back with the old Lewis Hamilton we know. And I feel like every single year, especially since Mercedes hasn't done so well and he lost that last 8th championship, this has kind of been the MO for Lewis Hamilton. We see him sad, down and depressed and hopeless, and then there's moments in the season where we see a glimpse of the GOAT come back on track, and I think this weekend was one of those. And honestly, I think Lewis was having a lot of fun. Starting off with gaining 11 places in this race this weekend. If there was anything to watch after lap 15, it was Lewis Hamilton. Honestly, everything else was kind of just playing out how it was playing out, but Lewis was making moves on that track, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him do all of these overtakes as he worked his way up the grid and eventually landed himself in a point spot, which is fantastic. We saw him after the race as well, pretty happy and content with his performance, even though he probably would have wanted more and been on that podium with Charles Leclerc eventually. But overall, I think it was a great weekend for him. It was good to see him back kind of weaving and dodging through the grid and making up some points, even though he was starting out of the points. Is this a sign that Lewis is getting a handle on this Ferrari? I don't know. I don't know if we can say that. This weekend was so kind of all over the place and interesting, and we know Lewis loves this track as well. He mentioned how much he loves it, as well as a lot of other drivers. It might have been just a coincidence, honestly, with the circumstances with the weather and the rain and the track conditions and taking the right pit stop when he needed to. But I do think it is a good sign, and nothing is bad when Lewis, or, you get a little boost of energy from a good performance. It could help you as the races go on, and I hope that this small, insignificant little win and step forward that Lewis has made at Spa this weekend kind of helps catapult him forward into the following races to come. I mean, it's always good to see that. Usually somebody that we see doing that is Max Verstappen. So it was nice to see Lewis Hamilton making those moves, doing those overtakes, and honestly giving us any form of entertainment during this race, because without him, it would have been pretty boring. But well done, Lewis. And also well done, Charles, getting some more points for Ferrari. We know they need them. They are second in the constructors' standings, way, way, way behind McLaren, but they're still holding second. So every little point matters, whether it's from Charles and Lewis. And I think Charles had a really great performance this weekend, not just in the main race, but in the sprint as well. He does really well, and I think those extra points that they gained this weekend from both drivers will be very helpful. Last but not least, I hate to end on a sad note, but we're going to. Let's talk about Kimi Antonelli, because I have a couple of questions for you guys to think on, but also things that were running through my mind. Obviously, this weekend we saw a version of Kimi that we have yet to see, which is a young, struggling, frustrated driver. Kimi did not have a good weekend at all this weekend. Just to put it into perspective, in the race he finished 16th, in qualifying he finished 18th, and in the sprint he finished 17th. So overall there really was nothing to kind of boost his adrenaline, have any kind of hope in with any of these results that he came out with this weekend in Belgium. We also saw a very emotional Kimi Antonelli in the media, which we have yet to see. And honestly, it made me question if, we're halfway through the F1 season. Is a lot of all of this pressure, a lot of just like the mental and physical fatigue of the season starting to get to him? Is that why we're seeing this emotional Kimi Antonelli kind of make an appearance in front of the media? Maybe this has happened already before behind the scenes, but this weekend we saw it come out in front of the media. It also makes me wonder if this is a sign that he's not 100% ready for F1. I think, we have to remember how young of a child, frankly, Kimi Antonelli is, and that this is a lot for an adult man or woman to handle, let alone a child to handle. And if we're starting to see some of that kind of emotional and physical wear and tear come into play when it comes to these types of results he got this weekend, who knows? I really, really felt bad for Kimi because you could tell that he expects a lot from himself, as most all drivers do. He really wanted to perform well for the team, and you really saw the heaviness on him of feeling like he has failed and let down the people that believe in him. I think he's very aware that Mercedes has made him kind of their future. They want to make him their own little Max Verstappen, if you will. So when he doesn't live up to the hype, that can definitely hurt a little more than normal. And seeing kind of that reaction from him this weekend made me a little sad, and also made me hope that he is being supported by not just the right people in his life, like family and friends and his teammates, obviously, and Toto Wolff, but also being helped by professionals, therapists, athletic therapists, people like that in his life that can help him navigate some of these really, really difficult and frankly unique mental situations that he's going through. I think this is also a great reminder that these drivers are human. They're human people with human emotions and human reactions, and if anything, this just shows how much Kimi Antonelli is taking this very seriously, and the expectations he places on himself. I was incredibly happy to see that Lewis Hamilton took it upon himself to go to the Mercedes motorhome afterward to talk to Kimi. I thought that was really, really great. I love that we see Lewis doing this, but also Lewis's dad doing this with Isaac Hadjar at the very first race of the season. I'm really happy to see kind of these older, just goats of the sport really coming in and to support these drivers, to remind them that, you know, you can't be this hard on yourself. You will have bad weekends. And also someone that they can relate to. I'm sure, you know, Lewis Hamilton telling you you're going to have bad weekends, it's okay, versus your dad telling you you're going to have bad weekends, it's okay, is very different, and very different on the way you might kind of take in that information and absorb it. So I was really happy to see Lewis Hamilton kind of step up in this leadership position, not just in a team sense, but also for all of F1 and these young drivers coming in. So Lewis, we love you. Kimi, we love you. It's okay. You're not going to kill it every time you leave that pit lane, and we know that as fans. And especially out of all the rookies, I think he needs to look back and say, like, wow, I've done pretty well for my rookie season, skipping F2, jumping right into F1, and putting in the performance I have put in so far. So bad weekends are going to happen, even if you're somebody like Lewis Hamilton. And I'm sure just those encouraging words from him really, really helped him. But yeah, that's all I got for you this weekend. Race recap, you guys. I know it is kind of weird being a solo episode. Trust me, this is weird. Sitting here talking to my computer screen without Yasmin and Daniela here. But I'm glad we were able to just bring you a bit of, you know, a Belgian recap, whether it's both of us, one of us. But I would love to know, how did you guys feel about the Belgian Grand Prix this year? How did you guys feel also about rain coming into play in this race in a different way than in the middle of the race? Would you prefer to see Spa maybe replaced on the calendar next year to a track where we don't have to be so weather dependent? Or would you want to keep Spa like forever? Or the way you feel about Spa is the way you feel about maybe another track like Monaco, for example? We would love to hear your opinions and thoughts on it. I would love to hear your opinions and thoughts on it. But until next episode, you guys, we will see you then, and we will see you in the fast lane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too.